Hey, good morning guys, my name is Birdman and welcome to another video that I have in store for you today. Today, we're going to be talking a bit about the Sentients and a new war. We're also going to be disclaiming this by starting off with, if you have not done the new war, if you have not done all of the prerequisite quests, if you do not know what a Sentient is, maybe avoid this video. You're absolutely... This video is intended to be for in-game players to late-game players. There is some newbie options here, but most of these grinds are requiring you to do a lot of things to acquire it. If you do want a newbie version on how to kill sentients, you probably should not be doing this in the first place because you don't need to fight the sentients in any circumstance unless you're doing specific quests. But by that time, you probably are well invested to handle those situations in the first place. With that being said, I will just continue and talk about the actual guide, because we are talking a bit about how to one-shot almost all sentients in the game. Now I should say, I'm saying it's all sentients, but do pay attention that not all the sentients could be one-shot. There is guys with shields, and normally you can't one-shot them in conventional means. I mean, all these sentients can't be killed in conventional means. And if you don't understand what I'm trying to say, basically the sentients have health gating. They have adaptation. They're basically like the Grenier, right? If you think about the Grenier, they have armor, they have some good resistance, they can even avoid certain CC. Although that's kind of taking it weirdly because most Grenier can be CC'd. But let's just put it this way, sentients are Grenier, but they have adaptation on and they have health gating. Now, if you're wondering what that specifically means, allow me to demonstrate. Sentients have adaptation, a replica of sorts of the Warframes. Now, we do not know the specifics. DE tends to keep this a bit under the jar when it comes to information about enemies in general, but I'll explain what I do know. Like I said, they have adaptation, meaning that for a specific amount of damage that you apply to them, when it hits a certain threshold, in other words, when it hits the health gate, and if you did not know, sentients have 4 health gates. When they hit 75%, 50%, 25%, and a 4th one that I can't remember where specifically, but there is 4 health gates. And the way it works is, health gating will basically negate all damage once it reaches a certain health gate. Meaning that it does not matter how much damage you apply to them, they will try and avoid that one shot as much as possible. So if you use 1 billion damage, hypothetically we do 1 billion damage to one sentient, as long as it's not slash or heat or gas or toxin or something like that, and it's just one big instance of damage, it will negate all of the damage up to a certain point. So it will basically take all that billions of damage and return a 0 when they reach, let's say, the 75% health gate. So no, you can't just go with like 32 million damage and just blast the dude and expect him to be one-shot. He won't take it that easily. The most you're going to do is break through to the 50% health. And that's just from sheer force of damage. Now obviously there is ways to go around it, and we're going to be tackling a lot of that right now. Sentients can be affected by corrosive because they do have armor. Regardless, you can still kill them. You can still use corrosive and it will still be super effective against sentients. Obviously to a lesser effect because they will eventually become resistant to corrosive. However, it's resistant to the corrosive damage. Now, adaptation, it works slightly different for the sentients in regards to the effects that you apply to them. So if you apply corrosive, they're still going to receive the corrosive effect and it won't be reduced in any way, meaning you are still technically stripping their armor. But they will receive the full brunt of the corrosive damage that you apply until they reach the health gate, to which they completely reduce the amount of corrosive damage you apply to them. Same thing works for viral, and viral kinda messes them up completely because then they don't understand where their health getting thresholds are. And you can even successfully reach the point where you can one-shot them by just using viral. Because viral, as I said, completely messes them up. If you can, in theory, and I haven't tested this for myself, but it is possible in my mind, that if you apply a 10-stack viral, followed by a massive blast of damage, you should be able to one-shot them theoretically, if you can break all the way through their 50% health threshold. Although, who's to say that even if you reduce their health by 50%, that they won't that they will still have their health gates in the first place, meaning that regardless, you probably are still going to not one-shot them in the first place. But I digress. We are going to be talking about one-shotting them regardless. There is unconventional ways to do the same thing. And with that being said, I'm going to try and just move along. And let's just get started with my favorite one, Zephyr. Because I'm a bird main. That's what I do. You bunch of apricots. So this is how it works. Zephyr has 2 ways to nuke, if you did not know. Believe it or not. She technically has 3. But we're not going to be talking about the third one just yet, because it's more or less just the second one to a smaller extent anyways. And obviously this is the second one, so let me just explain. Let's just hop into it. Mouselon, tornadoes. Boom boom, beam bam, thank you ma'am. Now with that being said, here's the Mouselon build. And here's my Zephyr build. Now obviously, if you did not notice from the previous video, okay, you didn't probably see it in the previous video because I made like a janky version of it, but in the original this is my original Zephyr build. This is what I use for almost every Warframe content in the game, unless it's specific boss fights, but regardless, I'm probably going to use it just out of spite. With that being said, it is a super effective build and it's very general, so you can use it against almost any enemy in the game. And regardless, even if you hyper-optimize into it, it's not going to matter because you're still going to one-shot the Sentients. That's kind of what it's meant to do. And with that being said, how on earth does the one-shot work? One-shot works like this. Firstly, you build up charge. That's the important section. This is the setting up. You have to kill at least 5 Sentients to get your ult up to max. Now, you have to kill them through conventional means. After that, once you have a full ult charge, you can toss tornadoes, try and get as many enemies into that group as possible, at least 5. Mind you, you need 5 enemies in the tornadoes to make this work. Once you have 5 enemies in that group, blast them with the Mouselon ult fire. And guess what? You now have a fully charged ult fire. After just using your ult fire. Do you know what that means, ladies and gentlemen? That means you can one-shot Sentients and just repeatedly fire them constantly until you destroyed everything in the map. Now, I should say this is very unconventional and it's probably not super efficient, but it is good at what the package says. It one-shot Sentients. Now, if you don't understand how that works, allow me to explain how Tornadoes works. Tornadoes has a very weird mechanic that is not easily explained, but as a Zephyr main, I have noticed the general gist of how these tornadoes work. Basically, they reflect an instance of the damage you apply. So if you applied, let's say, 1,000,000 corrosive damage, the tornado sees that you have applied corrosive damage to it, and it will reflect corrosive damage over a period of time. But it will also take the 1,000,000 corrosive damage, buff it to a certain extent, or split it amongst the multiple tornadoes, and then apply it in the form of true damage. Now, if you don't know what true damage is, Frost is the only other Warframe I know that applies true damage, and Zephyr can do that too, to a certain extent. Although I'm not too sure if it's actually true damage or a different instance of damage, or it could just be a separate instance of corrosive damage as well. We don't really know how it works, because obviously it's not very easy to tell what you're doing nowadays with the current rework of Zephyr. But we do know that because of this interaction, not only are you applying separate instances of the same damage, or more or less the same damage, but you're also able to bypass that health gating, meaning that, boom, one shot. And considering my Mouselon does more or less about 38 million damage, it's kind of going to guarantee a one shot if my tornado also reflects 38 million damage. And not even including the fact that I have 3 tornadoes out at the same time, meaning that's a lot of damage.
Yes, look at the damage. Look at the beautiful damage I'm applying.
Oh, wait, what? What? I mean, it's true. I mean, Garuda does like more or less the same damage numbers with with like the bare minimum of that of bolts, but like it's Zephyr. We're talking about like millions of damage, and like, are you serious? Like Garuda beats that basically? What? You mean a meta Warframe can outbeat a typical Zephyr bolt? Like what? What? No. Okay, no. We're not redoing this video. We are talking about bolts here. This is okay, fine. I'll tell them. All right. Hey, so guys, as I was saying, Zephyr's good, but there is a different alternative to it, and it's called Garuda. So, if you do not know, Garuda is basically the Queen of Slash. She basically bypasses the health gating because all she needs is like a very strong weapon that can do a bunch of damage and then apply slash to the enemy and then shoot them, and obviously it will bypass everything and then kill them eventually, right? Like, I mean that's strong. Like, okay, so I guess obligatory bolt for Garuda goes here, and sure, I'll give you my Prisma Angstrom. Look at that. Look at that damage, right? Very powerful. Cool. Anyways, we're not going to talk more about meta bolts. Let's just move right on. Alright, now it's time for the creme de la creme. The one reason I made this build in this video in the first place, because Zephyr is not the only one with two types of nuke potentials. And we're gonna just go ahead and get started with it, because this is actually one of my more favorite builds in general when it comes to sentient fighting. Now, we have a lot of very powerful Warframes that can do a lot of damage, right? And a lot of them can also do decent slash damage. But in this case, I'm going to go with Sevagoth, because Sevagoth, oh boy, we are talking about one-shots, and my boy can one-shot. And he doesn't even need to be alive to do that. Because guess what, ladies and gentlemen? When he dies, he can one-shot Sentients. And not only that, but killing Sentients with Reap and So Active allows him to basically build up his death well, so he has another means to one-shot without the chance of you dying. And even when in the other form of Shadow form, where you can, where you can still nuke the other way, you can still nuke when you're dead. You can still do the dead nuke as well, if you want to. And if you don't understand what I mean, when you're dead, Sevagoth, he basically kills the enemies outright, or at least makes them non-existent. And if you don't know what I mean, Sevagoth doesn't properly kill the enemy. He basically limbo rifts them. He sends them into another dimension entirely from the existence of the game. In other words, they're still there technically. Like, you can still reap and sow of them. In other words, if you have Gloom active and you want to use, and there's no enemies nearby and you're like in a situation where you're fighting a boss and you just want to get like free health and stuff, just cause sow on a bunch of guys you just killed accidentally and they no longer exist, and obviously you'll get free health off them. With that being said, that's for the dead nuke version, and obviously it's a one shot and it works against a single target, kinda like Garuda. But here's the kicker: Sevagoth also has, very strong heavy attacks. And remember when I said Garuda is the Queen of Slash? Sevagoth is the king of that. His heavy attacks do such an insane amount of slash damage that, from the last time I checked, it does about 4 million slash damage with the specific build I have active. And obviously I'm giving you the build right now. With that being said, I should be having preparation on my Sevagoth, but I can't afford it. But it's a pretty good build, and obviously I didn't really put a former on any of this stuff. So yeah, you're pretty much sorted out if you want a zero former version of Sevagoth that one-shots. With that being said, guys, I hope you guys actually enjoyed that video. I want to make more of them. I do know other nuke builds, but for the sake of sentient combat, I probably should not be mentioning them because they don't actually one-shot. So whoop-de-doo. With that being said, I do hope these warframes, these weapons, these loadouts, these builds, I hope these stuff actually help you out, because New War is right around the corner and we should be prepared. And obviously, if you have these weapons already, feel free to try them out. They're worth it. They're absolutely worth it. I've taken every single one of them at least once through the Railjack missions, where you have to fight the Sentient, of course. But they're pretty good, because obviously, one shot. They're all one shot, and they're all really good at what they do. And they're relatively inexpensive to build for, with the exception of obviously grinding for the mouse long when it comes to Zephyr. Although there is an alternative to that, and I'll make another video of that soon. But for now, allow me to just hint with it, kit guns. With that being said, thank you guys so much for watching the video. If you did, please do the things that that you do with the look at that. It's an animatic of it's me. I'm doing editing things here. I'm moving my character, and I'm just going to slowly talk until the thing eventually cuts me off mid-sentence.